So this is just part of our, hi Nick, this is all part of our Tech Connect series, as you know. So we run these on a regular basis. We've got all the content on the TRM Well platform about the different tech stuff that's going on. We did a session this morning with one of the members talking about their tech journey. So that'll be up on the platform later on today. And that was all about exactly what they're implementing, what they're using, what their tech stack looks like, and so on and so forth. For those of you who are here live, thanks for joining us live, obviously. If you've got any questions at any stage, pop them in the chat, as always, and we'll make sure we get those answered as we go. And those of you listening back to the recorded version of this, if you've got any questions retrospectively, as always, ping them through to us. We'll make sure we get them answered either by myself or we'll hand them over to our guests to get answered for you as well. Today, I mean, I think this will probably be a good sort of 25-minute, half an hour chat, depending on how long our guest talks for. You never know. My experience is it could be a 6 hour, it could be a 6 hour conversation. We never know. But we brought along Nitin Sharma. I'm sure many of you know Nitin. He's got a great reputation in the marketplace. Co-founder of RecTalk, RecTools, and RecCircle. I'll probably get Nitin to explain a bit more about what they're all about as well. He's also involved in the Recruitment Curry Club. If any of you have been to one of those yet, I went to my first one the other week in Birmingham and got my initiation, and I have to say it was a hell of a lot of fun and quite interesting as well. So Nitin, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Do you want to, just before we sort of, I know you've got a bit of a sort of a slide deck you're going to run us through, get the conversation going. Do you want to just give us a quick overview of you and what your background is, what you do?
Yeah. So, hi guys, I'm Nitin. I am fortunate enough to host the biggest podcast in the recruitment industry called RecTalk. We've currently got 67,000 subscribers on YouTube and an average of 3,500 to 4,000 downloads and streams per episode. The majority of what I do is effectively platform the supply chain, so people who supply into businesses like yours, and find out about kind of why they do what they do, what problem they solve, and where their market fit is to help business owners like yourselves figure out the fit for your business as to whether or not it should be something you look into or not. I'll explain more in the presentation to kind of
perfect. No, brilliant. And obviously, Nitin, you and I have caught up a few times, and we always get into mass debates and arguments and discussions, and then start fighting, which is great fun. So hopefully, we're going to see a bit of that today, a bit of sparring. But I think this is such an emotive subject, isn't it, at the moment, around the technology stack that we've got, because it's now a big expense in a lot of recruitment companies. I've literally just walked. I'm in London. I've just walked out of a board meeting with one of the members, and we're talking about their transformational change they're going on as a business to be completely fit for purpose in tomorrow's market because of AI and everything else. So this is quite emotive at the moment because a lot of people are really trying to get their heads around it. So I'll let you sort of lead with your sort of presentation, but I'm going to get into a bit of a sort of debate with you. So as I say, anyone on the call, if you've got any questions as we go, feel free to drop them in the chat or ask, and let's make sure we really understand practically what this is all about.
Great, thank you, mate. I'm assuming it's 2025, but I still have to ask the question, right? Can everyone see the screen? And
we can,
yeah. Right. So look, the reality is that there's a whole lot of noise and a whole lot of choice out there, and I'm in a fortunate position in terms of what I do. Just to give you a bit of background, so I actually, like yourselves, used to run a recruitment agency. I started in recruitment in 2014. By 2017, decided I could do it for myself and went and tried. We grew, scaled, and ultimately failed the recruitment agency, and I closed that down in 2023. During that time, I'd sort of started the podcast and sort of started RecTools, and I always say that if I knew then what I knew now, my business wouldn't have failed, and I wouldn't have let some really good people go. But hey, everything I think happens for a reason, right? So I'm in a really fortunate position in that I get to speak to a lot of different variety of suppliers, from your startups and your new entrants into the industry to people who are really firmly established and so on. And I think it's probably because I don't have a boss that I can be kind of true to what my genuine opinion is, and I will platform those who I think are worth platforming, and I'll challenge those who I think are worth challenging. RecTools, for those of you who don't know, is the only whole of market directory of all the suppliers. So the idea is, I mean, if you think it's top of funnel stuff for me, but anybody who has a product or service sits in RecTools, and then I kind of pick and choose the ones that I think are worth talking to. I think before you look at kind of the tech landscape and the product portfolios that are out there, I think you really need to understand kind of your own business. And what I mean by that is not sort of who you are and what your value statements and your mission statements are, but actually things like, well, who is your ICP? As in, actually, who's buying from you? You know, so your client portfolio. From experience, I'll give you an example. My recruitment agency for a large amount of our time specialized in accountancy and finance recruitment. And so we were on PSLs with the big audit firms, the top 10 accountancy firms, with FTSE listed businesses and big blue chips. And so in our heads, we were like, our ICP is these big blue chip businesses. But actually, when you looked at the revenue and where it was actually coming from, it was the smaller owner-led businesses, it was manufacturing businesses and technology businesses in the local area. So whilst on paper we're on numerous PSLs and working a range of different jobs, the actual revenue was coming from a different market to what we thought. And I think if we would have identified that sooner in our journey, we probably would have been able to select a tech stack that would have sort of complemented that rather than complemented our egos, because we thought, no, we only deal with the blue chips and we go head to head with the big boys. Look at what channels work for you as well. Again, I think we're in a different world now. I firmly believe that recruitment is not a sales business anymore. It is a professional service, much like a law firm or an accountancy practice, and therefore clients have a certain expectation. And so when I say what channels work for you, I think there's a lot of businesses that still rely heavily on outbound calling, and that's fine if it works for you in your market. But if you, again, objectively look at it and go, actually, our LinkedIn activity generates a lot of inbound, our in-mail activity generates a lot of inbound, our mail shot strategy doesn't work, you know, and we had that in my business, it just didn't work. So there was little point in going and signing up to MailChimp Pro when what we were doing was just sending out more noise. Then you got to look at kind of your processes that you've got in your workflow. Some agencies register every candidate and spend a lot of time doing kind of exploration and detailed conversations with those candidates before they put them on the CRM. Others will go, no, I just want to take everybody that's potentially suitable, lob them in my CRM, and then move them into an email marketing campaign and sense check who the most suitable people are. Some of them spend absolutely no time whatsoever populating their CRM and directly into a job board. Then you've got your interview processes, how you interview, how you take your job briefs, how you know, the processes that you've got within your business will all vary from team to team and from business to business. I think that's incredibly important to understand why. We all know, you know, your recruitment business is unique to you because of the people that operate within it, but actually also the processes and sort of how you do what you do. And I think you really need to understand that workflow again before you start even looking at what stacks are out there and what products potentially could be useful for you. And then you've got to be honest about what's working and what isn't working, which I think is fairly obvious. But in my experience, in the conversations I've had with recruitment leaders over the years and sort of business owners that have been there and done that, ego often plays a part in it, and you don't necessarily want to admit when something isn't working. You just think, you know, if it takes me 100 outbound calls to pick up 5 vacancies and I want to pick up more vacancies, well, I need to do 200 outbound calls. And I just don't think the world is akin to that anymore, especially with the tech and supply chain that's out there for you.
Nitin, we were chatting about this morning with a couple of people. There's 2 things I just want to touch on with that. I think your principles are absolutely spot on with that. And we were saying, you know, even more so now, recruitment businesses need to be thinking a bit more into the future. So we talk about what makes us relevant today, what's going to make us relevant tomorrow. I think is probably the critical question right now because the world's changing at such a fast pace. And looking at how markets are shifting accordingly. But then the other piece around that, I mean, I do love the debate about cold calling, whether recruitment is a sales industry or not a sales industry. But the fact of the matter is, you all would have read about, everyone on the call today, you would have read about that, the new iPhone release, where basically it's going to screen every cold call. You have to justify why you're cold calling in a message. So when I get a cold call from Garvin, for example, there'll be a message underneath it first telling me what it's about, and God has to justify it before I even consider picking it up. So that's going to obliterate the cold calling industry or the cold calling market naturally anyway, whether you like it or not. So if that's your only channel that you've always used, you're going to be sort of buggered a little bit. That's just a reality check.
And this is the point, especially then when you've got AI dialer systems that are hitting the market and people are running to those as a solution to some of these problems. Well, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but that's the point: is you've got to be honest about what does work and what doesn't work in your business, in your field. I think the key thing to remember here is that you're not behind. There are very, very, very few agencies who've got the optimum tech stack right now. So you can't keep and a lot of people are guilty of this is it's not a keeping up with the Joneses thing. You can't keep looking at other businesses and being like, oh well, you know, some people are using Apollo incredibly well, and some people are using, you know, this person was talking about this workflow thing, and you know, I'm missing out. That I think creates a lot of the noise and a lot of the shit that's happening out there at the minute, because people think that they're being left behind and they're just not, because the truth is your technology, it needs to be an investment. The tech stack that you bring into your business, the workflows that you put into your business, like James said, you've got to be looking for the future, not resolving a problem for today, because those problems are only going to get exasperated. And you know, the rules are going to change at the drop of a hat. We saw the rules change with the emails and the volume of emails that you can send. We've seen this thing now come in with the AI screening of cold calling. It's got to be something that you look at as an investment and not an impulse buy. And I hate to say it this way, but like, you know, don't just buy a bit of tech because you like the salesperson, or because you know the people around you are telling you that the CRM that they're using is the best one. It might be for them. It might very well be for them, but it doesn't mean that it's the best one out there. There is no one single CRM that is better than anyone else's. You know, I always get asked, "Oh, what's the best tech stack out there right now? What are the best tools out there right now?" And my answer is always the same: either none of them or all of them, because I don't know what you need, right? And it's the same as anything. Like, you know, there's a reason why somebody would buy one brand of car over another. There's a reason why somebody would buy a sports car over a seven-seater. You know, it's suited to that person's needs. And I think we often lose track of that when dealing with kind of tech in recruitment, because we just feel like there is a silver bullet out there and we just need to find it. It's not an impulse buy. Talking of noise and I don't think it's even noise and spam anymore. It's more sludge, right? There's a lot of information out there. I think that you people need to understand and properly understand the difference between automation and AI. And among teachers suck eggs, you know, it's readily available information, but automation is sort of taking a process that can be replicated and using tech to do that. And AI is effectively using machine learning to adapt and to make those decisions based on a data set. But you get a lot of supply chain vendors out there at the moment who are kind of mixing the two up and offering you an AI solution when in actual fact it is just an automation solution, and vice versa. You know, offering an automation solution which relies heavily on AI, but because they've chose to go down the lane of, you know, calling it automation because they think that recruitment businesses prefer that terminology. Take a step back, I think, is really important to understand the differences between the two and to see what your business needs rather than kind of what sounds the coolest. And then it's decision time. Then you got to look at all the different things that you do as a business, whether it's outreach, candidate attraction, sales, marketing, onboarding, interviewing, offer management, invoicing, aftercare, admin. There's a tech solution for every single one of those. You've just got to decide which bits that you don't want to physically have either a human doing or have too much involvement in, because you want to take your billers away from doing admin work and free them up to do billing or billing based activities. Or maybe you want to mitigate mistakes. Maybe you want to offer a better service. Maybe the way that you onboard businesses in your temp business for your clients is very manual, but actually there's a solution out there that can fast track that or can make it a lot more slick. You know, maybe you've got a lot of time, or you want to invest a lot of more time into marketing, but you don't know where to start. Well, there's tools out there that will help you do that. But you really got to know what it is you want before you kind of look for the solution. And I think that's the key takeaway for this session from me is there's tons of good tools out there and there's tons of shit tools out there. But whether they're good or whether they're not good is entirely on your business and your processes and where you need them during this workflow, not their Google reviews or their Trustpilot reviews or what Tom, Dick, and Harry says about them. Because truth be told, in this day and age, a lot of the time they're just getting paid to say good things, and so you got to be mindful of that. And that's all from me.
Fantastic. Listen, thank you for that. Perfect. I've got a few questions. Again, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and etc. One of the things, there's a few things that I'm sort of principles that we've been sharing across TRN, and you could probably stop sharing your screen if you want to. Your tech strategy should always be CRM first. We've invested lots of money into a CRM system. You're probably going to change it once every 5 years. So you might as well build it out, your tech stack, from what you've already paid for, which is your CRM system. We're seeing a lot of people buy a CRM. They've got Bullhorn or Job Adder, and then they're going, I'm now going to go and buy this thing over here, or this thing that doesn't even integrate, it doesn't even API into it. Surely that's the wrong approach. You've got to start with what your CRM provider's got and what you can get out of that first before we start adding bolting stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you've got to look at don't be afraid to change your CRM. I think too many businesses get to a certain size and the concept of changing CRM feels so expensive and arduous that they just don't bother doing it. And there for me is where people like, and this isn't to throw shade at Bullhorn, they're obviously fantastic at what they do, but that's where people like Bullhorn can hang their hat and sort of be like, well, not many people are going to leave us, so we don't need to build any additional cool tech. In fact, we'll just open up the marketplace and allow people to build that tech that integrates with us, and we can sit happily in the middle. And I think the problem, that's where the costs start increasing, because then if you're paying for a Bullhorn license and then you want something to, then you want something akin to a Sourcewell for automation, and then you want something akin to, lead generating, and so you go to Venti, and before you know it, you're paying little mini subscriptions on top of what should have been your core subscription. Whereas if you take that step back and go, hang on, actually, what I want is my CRM to update itself every time my LinkedIn connections move or change jobs. Tick, I'd love that. That would be great. And then I'd like some level of AI automation to outreach to them. Tick, I'd love that. And go out to market looking for that. Well, you might find Recruiterflow who do exactly all of that. And it's not going to be at the cost that you're paying Bullhorn for, because you haven't got the subscriptions of paying for this and then the add-on and the plugin and the plugin. This has happened for years in the tech space, for absolutely years. 90, not 90, sorry, it's something like 78% of all websites 2 years ago were built on WordPress. Everybody used WordPress to build their websites, and WordPress has plugins. So then you pay for WordPress for hosting that. And then for every little thing you want, whether it's a contact form, whether it's a database, whether it's a front end thing or whatever, you go in and you're signing up to these different plugins. And before you know it, you said no to the website builder who said this website's going to cost you $5,000 to build, and you're paying the equivalent of £500 per month instead with all the plugins. And it's just a false economy. Because the core decision was, oh no, I've started building in WordPress, so I need to stick in WordPress. It's the same mentality within recruitment. You're absolutely right. The CRM should be the core part of what we do, but listen, we're in a world where people can write a Python script and do a data transfer for you, and the AI technology can populate kind of what we used to call coding, can populate your client transfer and your candidate data transfer into all the different categories that you want for a fraction of the cost that it used to be.
For sure. We had a bit of a competition going on after a particular event that was for recruiters. I won't say what it was. Let's call it an expo. And there were lots of people selling technology or promoting technology, of most of which I thought was rubbish or wasn't really technology, or it certainly wasn't AI, half of it. Sometimes we thought we had a competition the next day to see how many of those things we could build ourselves to do the same thing using ChatGPT and Make to automate it, make.com. And we found about 5 or 6 products that people were selling, we could actually just rebuild ourselves doing AI and Make it with literally with a beer in our hands, sort of thing. There's definitely a sense at the moment there's a lot of rubbish coming onto the marketplace that actually is not really needed, but that people can build themselves. Do we think that people on this call, recruitment leaders, etc., should have the ability to build their own stuff ahead of buying stuff, or should we just buy stuff in and not bother trying to build it ourselves?
And 100% the first bit. I am a massive advocate for Look, we're very much in this Web3 world, right? Where, it used to cost you thousands upon thousands to just get to MVP, to then take something to market and trial it with a bunch of customers or, within your business, and then decide if it was worth investing the remaining amount of money to build the thing. We don't need to do that anymore with low code, no code solutions, with like things like make.com, with things like Apollo, with all these different sequence based products that are out there. Look, the majority of those tech businesses that you see in this startup zone at things like an expo, they're all powered on GPT. The
Yeah,
majority of them are powered on GPT. So yeah, absolutely, you can do it yourself, or you can do a version of it yourself. Figure out whether or not. Hang on. So I think there's a route to help my business with this sort of thing. So let me just build a bastardized version of it and see if it works. And if that works, then you've got a choice of going, okay, well, we could just carry on using this internally and it's costing us a fraction, or we can maybe make it a bit more prettier and easier to use, or we can go and buy a product that's equivalent. And I think that we're very much in a situation where everybody's rushing to market with the next tech solution because they think that people are scared of building their own. But you and I both know, James, that once you start playing with these things, the learning curve isn't as steep as you think it is. A lot of the
no.
hard work is done for you, and before you know it, you're spat out the other side, going, right, I don't need to bring on, I don't need to be buying tech. I just need to figure out what workflow works for me, and I can
Mhm.
make that happen itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That workflow thing, by the way, if those of you haven't done it yet, do the Project Automate thing. I'm just taking a business, they've got 130 consultants, they're one of the members. I've just taken them through Project Automate, which is up on the TRM World platform. Do that. If you haven't started the process, do that first. There's a couple of examples on there of other people's, so you can see what it looks like. But again, it's work flowing out the business before you start putting tech in. And if anyone's got any questions, by the way, please feel free to add them in the chat or put your hand up or however these things work on these things. Nitin, there is a question I wanted to ask you actually, and I'm not trying to circumnavigate everything we just talked about, but
No.
actually looking at some of the tools that you are seeing come onto the market at the moment, what in particular are you finding quite interesting, quite exciting, whether it be front office, back office, middle office, or anywhere in between? Anything in particular we should be looking
Yeah,
out
yeah.
for?
Look, I'm happy to name drop ones that genuinely fascinate me. I think what Dries de Costa's doing with Meet Dwight is interesting,
Yeah.
and fascinating. He's not the first to do kind of robotic automation of manual admin tasks, but I think the way that they're pricing it and the way their route to market is particularly interesting for me because there's not a implementation fee and there's not a it's when you build something that's competing with, hey, you have a person doing this, let's have a robot do this. Well, I expect from a mindset and a psychology perspective to pay for it in the same way I pay for a person. So if I'm paying a monthly fee, which is, in my mind, similar to a salary, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's fascinating. I had a very interesting demo earlier on today with a company called Dialer who do automated kind of voice cloning dialing and AI dialing, which I'm absolutely not a fan of whatsoever, because I've had a couple of people demo me these things in the past. But what they've built is interesting because it can be challenged, it can be conversational, and then there's a sort of a lead generation piece within there as well. You can drop a CV in and it will go, hey, you could spec it out to all of these people, and then you go, okay, yeah, automate these calls. And you think,
Mhm.
actually, that's quite clever. I think that yes, I can see as a place in the market, maybe in the high volume recruitment space. There's things like Recruiter Flow CRM is absolutely phenomenal, and I think their biggest challenge, truthfully, is the fact that they're based out in India, because the rest of the world seems to be on board with it. I mean, Australia, they're massive in Australia, and things like Singapore and Malaysia, and they're only just starting to crack this UK market because everybody in the UK seems to think that Atlas is the only AI powered CRM, whereas what Recruiter Flow are doing is miles ahead of where Atlas currently are, and Atlas is a
Mhm.
good product. So yeah, I think there's some cracking products out there. You just got to know what you want. Gone are the days where I think the SaaS model is dead. And it frustrates me when it's, here here's our product and it does option one, two, or three. Which one do you want? I think we've got to move to a results as a service model, as in what do you actually want to achieve? Well, I would like my CRM to tell me when somebody's moved jobs, to generate leads for me, give me a workflow in the morning of my outstanding tasks and things that I could be doing for business development activity and my candidate generation tasks that I need to do, and just let me crack on with it.
Mhm.
That exists, you know?
Totally agree. The one of the members, and we've been working on this now with them quite closely, is basically cancelling all their LinkedIn licenses. So they got about 65 consultants. They've now worked out automated workflows to do everything that they used to do on LinkedIn, and they don't need LinkedIn anymore. What are your thoughts about that? Let's call this chapter "The Death of LinkedIn" because it sounds quite good.
Yeah, no. I've seen products that replicate LinkedIn Recruiter at a fraction of the cost. They work incredibly well. I've seen products that kind of automate your LinkedIn outreach and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, if the majority of your customer base are on LinkedIn, they're not going anywhere as a social platform. LinkedIn are a social media. Microsoft don't own Facebook or Meta channels and TikTok and that kind of thing. LinkedIn is a social media network. I think recruiters have learning the hard way. The majority of recruiters are learning the hard way that they can't use LinkedIn in the way they used to, i.e., I'm recruiting for a project manager paying £800 a day in London, DM me for details, and then sit and scratch their head going, nobody got in touch with me. Well, of course they didn't, because it's a social media, not a job site anymore. But yeah, so, cancelling LinkedIn recruiter licenses makes sense to me. It's incredibly expensive for really what you should be using your CRM for. Plus, there's a lot of ways around sort of extracting information out of LinkedIn and putting it into your database and making sure that you own that information rather than them. I think they'll be around, but I think LinkedIn will probably be changing how they run their licenses soon too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if any of you on the call are interested in how you can move away from LinkedIn, let us know. We'll walk you through the project that we've been doing with these guys. It's fascinating and I think really exciting, and a huge opportunity I think that lies ahead. There was one question that comes in around BD and brand awareness and all this outreach type of stuff. So things like using things like Expandy and that type of stuff, etc. What are your thoughts around? And I'll be interested to hear from people on the call today actually about what your general thoughts are around automated outreach, especially with things like voice bots and that type of thing. Do you think it's acceptable? It will be acceptable down the track that we're going to get automated phone calls from AI agents doing the sales outbound outreach for us? Interesting thoughts.
Interesting question. I think with the automated outreach stuff, I personally look, the majority of my revenue comes from LinkedIn. There's absolutely no way that I would risk using Dripify, BotDog, Expand, whatever it is, and put my livelihood at risk in the hands of a developer who tells me that, oh no, we've managed to find a sneaky way around it. LinkedIn are very, very clear about using automation on their platform, and if they were to block you from, and I've seen people get blocked for a variety of different reasons, it's not pretty and it's not easy to just then go and set up another account and come back in again. I think tread carefully is what I'd say. I have used it and I have trialed a few, right? Again, before I give my opinion on stuff, I like to try and play around with this stuff. And I sent out 150 messages through BotDog and Dripify. The response rate was minimal because, and I tried to be clever and was like, oh, hey, James, this is an automated message. Apologies if it's not the right audience, blah, blah, blah. I tried to be kind of quirky and clever with it. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And also, what are you trying to achieve? Because I can send you a connection request with no note or anything, and if you're interested in what I'm doing or you fancy building out your connection, well, you're going to accept anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
But if I'm trying to hit you with product after product and pitch after pitch, well, just get in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why there's a whole lot of work that we've been doing around building communities. So if any of you want any help, there's a really cool document I created fairly recently, which I'm happy to share again, just posted out on TRN, all about how to build a proper community strategy and then use AI to basically build that for you. I think that's definitely the future of business development, or a big part of that future of business development. So again, if any of you want a copy of that, just let me know and I'll get that sent across after this call today. Unless there are any other questions on the call, I think the principles here are pretty simple. It's like before you go in and start shopping and all that type of stuff, take a step back, workflow out your business. That's why we created Project Automate. That's why Nitin does the stuff that he does, etc. But have a good think about that piece around what are you actually trying to do with your tech stack first before you go and buy a whole load of stuff. I am very concerned that many of our industry so far have overspent and bought stuff they're never going to use. from a tech point of view, and we're slowly trying to unwind that now. I think this is a really good opportunity to get this right. The other thing I will always say to everybody as well is if you are a business that's got staff, 10, 15, 20 staff within your business, you must have an enterprise strategy. You can't be an in-your-pocket strategy. In your pocket being all of my recruiters have got ChatGPT and they play with stuff in their pocket, which sounds a bit weird thing to say, but you know what I mean? Instead of having an actual enterprise strategy, this is how we use tech and AI across our business. And build it out from that point of view. I was doing an exercise with one of the members earlier on this morning. We were talking about how many paid GPT licenses they needed. And I basically showed them how you only actually need one license. But with automation, you can then feed the results of that to different people via automation. So you don't need to buy multiple licenses. You just have one that automates and then feeds your consultants.
Have you done much on Copilot?
A fair bit, yeah. Well, our next AI session, which is next Friday, is all about Copilot, yeah.
That for me is the game changer. I think if you're in a a 5 headcount business or more, and you've got everybody using GPT and you're on the Microsoft tech stack in terms of like Outlook and so on and so forth, switch to Copilot because it's so much more secure and you can control so much more information and data and it stays within your business. I think that's so relevant.
And it talks to everything that you're using on a day-to-day basis anyway, sort of stuff.
That's
so yeah, absolutely. Listen, Nitin, really pleased you join us today. Thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you, I'd highly recommend it. I mean, being general when I say this, Nitin and I do have some good debates, but he does know his stuff and it's really interesting when you get underneath the bonnet of it. So highly recommend having a catch up. I'm sure Nitin's always up for it. He's only up for a curry, I know that. So that's part of the curry club. So if you fancy a curry with him, I'd recommend that one. But do reach out to have a chat if you've got any particular questions. Otherwise, what I do highly recommend is please go through the Project Automate stuff. I'm saying this to every member I'm working with. I won't talk to you about AI properly unless you've done the Automate thing first, because it just becomes a bit too what should I buy type question as opposed to what am I trying to do? And I think that question is far more important, I think. So Nitin, thanks for your time as always. Really appreciate it. Great to catch up. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today, as always, and thank you for those who are listening back to the recorded version of today. Please reach out to Nitin when you get a moment, and let's keep getting this AI story right, because it's really now a fundamental part of how we're running our businesses. There's no getting away from it. Good to see you all. Catch up very soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nitin. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.